We are on page 162. Guys, come on. We're on page 162. This is chapter 35. Excuse me. Squeak just convinced Arthur to let him go to his probation with him, like the community service thing with him. And he explained like what Mr. Hampton is doing to Squeak. He kind of asked for his opinion. So we're on 162. This is chapter 35. We're going to at least read one. Fortunately, Saturday turned out to be a decent day, a little windy, but pretty warm for the middle of February. Arthur was pleased to see it would be good weather for pushing the cart around 7th Street collecting stuff with Squeak. Even though he hadn't called Officer Billy to tell her he wasn't quitting, he hoped the hours would still count towards his probation. Because remember, he just told Officer Billy he was quitting because he found out that James Hampton was dying of cancer, or potentially dying of cancer. So he goes anyway, even though he said he was quitting. He'd give Squeak the job of finding a mirror, he thought with a smile. Of course, Squeak showed up for trash picking dressed as if he were about to enroll in a college. Loafers, neatly cuffed denim jeans, and a gosh-awful bright red pullover. For crying out loud, what the heck are you wearing? Arthur said when he opened the door and saw him. Didn't I tell you to wear crummy clothes? Did you forget or what? These are old, Squeak insisted. With a loud sigh, Arthur pulled on his old elementary school coat and yanked his black knit cap over his head. If Squeak wanted to look like an idiot collecting trash, it wasn't his problem, he tried to tell himself. He was just glad his mom and sister had left to run a few errands, so he wouldn't get the endless questions about who his new friend was and comments about how nice it was he'd made a friend and blah, blah, blah. They started down the street with Arthur still feeling annoyed. Bye, Sam. Have a good day. You do this every Saturday in the snow and everything? Squeak said after they'd only gone a few blocks. He seemed genuinely impressed. Yeah, Arthur shrugged. It's not all that bad, really. How many more hours of probation do you have left? Arthur had to admit he'd lost track. Around 80 or 90 hours, I think, but I'm not sure. Wow, Squeak said, shaking his head. Arthur didn't know if he meant wow good or wow bad. As they got closer to the neighborhood where Hampton's garage was, Arthur could see Squeak was getting more nervous. He kept taking quick looks over his shoulders. His hands were jammed in his pockets. He walked faster. So he's in a rough neighborhood. He's not used to being in a rough neighborhood. He's got really nice clothes on. So Squeak is like nervous that maybe he'll get jumped or robbed or something like that. So he is not used to this kind of a place. So he's walking fast. He's like looking over his shoulder, and he's got his hands in his pockets. He's kind of scared. I told you to wear old clothes, Arthur reminded him. He knew 7th Street wasn't the best-looking area, but it wasn't dangerous. At least he'd never had any trouble. There was a big beware of dogs sign on a house where he had never seen any dogs. Another dilapidated house had a tabby cat that always sat in the front window, top of 164 now. It had taken Arthur a couple of Saturdays to decide whether the cat was real. He pointed it out to Squeak. Really, it's a lot safer around here than in the cafeteria at Bird, that's the school they're in. Arthur said, nobody is going to nail you in the back with a hot dog here. Squeak laughed. Okay. As they turned at Groovy Jim's and started down the short gravel alley, Arthur gestured toward the shop. Groovy Jim is pretty cool. I'll introduce you later. Squeak... Squeak glanced back at the shop. Yeah, someday I'm going to get one. What? You want to get a tattoo? Squeak nodded. Yeah, something dangerous. Like a big white skull or a snake. You know, right here on my arm. He seemed serious, so Arthur kept a straight face and tried not to laugh. He couldn't picture Squeak with a skull on his skinny white biceps, ever. When they got to the garage, there was no grocery cart sitting outside, of course. The place appeared as deserted as always. This is it? Squeak asked, looking doubtful. Yeah, this is it. Nothing fancy. Arthur could still see the tire tracks of the ambulance that had taken Mr. Hampton away. It seemed like it had been months ago instead of only a week. So remember, Mr. Hampton is still in the hospital, recovering.
Stay in a hospital.
No, me neither.
I hate my checkup.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So he's not there to like leave the cart or any notes or anything like that. So it's kind of weird looking over there. It seemed like it had been months ago instead of only a week. Shaking his head, he reached into his pocket for the keys Mr. Hampton had given to him. He hoped the guy was doing better. He hoped it wasn't a mistake that he'd brought Squeak to see his strange masterpiece. Without even thinking, he unlocked the door and pushed it open. And there was James Hampton working inside. So he's surprised to see James Hampton is actually there. Yeah, so he's out of the hospital. So we'll see what he's doing.